when I invented the sports bra, I was just solving my own problem.
Yeah.
And then I thought, because I was just starting graduate school, and I thought, how am I going to earn a living? I thought maybe it'd be a nice little mail order business on the side, because if I wanted it, I bet some other women did.
Right.
Well, oh my.
Yeah. You didn't think you'd be starting a revolution.
No, I didn't.
I'm Brandon Vaidyanathan, and this is Beauty at Work, the podcast that seeks to expand our understanding of beauty, what it is, how it works, and why it matters for the work we do. This season of the podcast is sponsored by Templeton Religion Trust and is focused on the beauty and burdens of innovation. Many of us want to change the world, but what happens if you change the world and still find yourself searching for what truly matters? In 1977, Lisa Lindahl invented the sports bra, a product that revolutionized women's athletics around the world. For that invention, she was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame, joining luminaries like Thomas Edison and the Wright brothers. But years after building a successful company and achieving the kind of recognition that most inventors can only dream of, Lisa found herself standing by Lake Champlain, wondering why contentment still felt out of reach. And then came a surprising revelation. Beauty is what really matters. That insight led her from the world of business to a lifelong exploration of what she calls true beauty. Beauty that she sees as being not about glamour or cosmetics, but about harmony and relationship and compassion and creation, and a belief that beauty may be what truly can heal the world. Lisa is the author of Beauty as Action, which explores beauty not as appearance but as harmony, and a memoir, Unleash the Girls, which recounts the unlikely story of inventing the sports bra while in graduate school and what it taught her about creativity, resilience, and purpose. Let's get started. All right, Lisa, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us. Great to have you on the show.
It's wonderful to be here. I am so excited about this work you're doing. I've been so interested in beauty, what I call true beauty, for so long. When I saw what you were doing, I was just really, thank you. I'm so excited.
Well, yeah, no, thanks for reaching out. I mean, your book on true beauty is really quite amazing, and we'll jump into that and talk about that in a little bit. But to get started, I'd love it if you could share with us a story of an encounter with beauty that you had perhaps as a child or in your early life that you still remember that takes you back.
That's easy peasy, because this is a memory that I've carried with me all my life. We were living in an area that if I walked across my backyard and down a hill, there was a river that went along. And when I was about 9 or 10 years old, I would walk down in the winter. This river would freeze, and I would walk down and put on my ice skates and get on the river and skate on it, where it ended up in a big lake, but there was nobody on this river. And one day I'm on my skates and I'm on the river skating along, and it's so quiet. And everything was just encased in ice. There must have been a big snowstorm or ice storm, I don't know. And I'm skating along, and I look down, and there's the branch of a pine tree that had fallen in the water, and the water had frozen all around it. And every needle was encased, and it, the ice was black, and it was just the most beautiful piece of art embedded in this frozen water. And I stopped, and there's nobody around. It was me and the forest and the river. And it was so beautiful. And that's my memory. I mean, literally, I have remembered that forever.
Yeah, what about it stayed with you? I mean, yeah, it sounds magnificent, but many of us might have such experiences, and we say, well, that was nice, and move on. But what do you think has lodged that within you in this way?
Well, it was it was the quiet. It was daytime, and there was no sound other than the creaking. Maybe. I was aware of no sound other than my ice skates, my breathing, and looking at this. It's like being in a piece. I mean, now this is my later self saying, it was like being in a piece of art.
Wow.
But that's my later self kind of.
Sure. Yeah.
But I still remember that. I had an earlier experience also when I was much younger, like maybe 3 or 4, standing on my mother had a balcony off of her bedroom, a porch, and I had gone out to it because I remember the bars of the railing on this little second story porch were at my nose.
Mm.
and um and it was sunny, it was summer, I guess, and I was looking at the leaves being ruffled by the wind and the light on the leaves and their movement. And all of a sudden, Brandon, all of a sudden, I was one with that. The minute I became aware of, oh my gosh, we're all, it's me, it was done.
Mm.
The minute that thought, I had a thought,
Yeah.
differentiated myself again. And
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It pulls you out of the experience, right? When you reflect on it and analyze it and recognize what's happening. And yeah.
recognize that was the case here. That never left me, that sense of we are all, I had experienced being one with the universe.
Wow.
And
Wow. Extraordinary. You do write about this sense of harmony, this sense of connection in your book, Beauty in Action. But I want to first actually ask you a little bit about your other book. But most people know you as the inventor of the sports bra.
this is what I'm famous for.
That's right. Yeah. And you're shaking your head. So
I really, I had no idea. I was just, when I invented the sports bra, I was just solving my own problem.
Yeah.
And then I thought, because I was just starting graduate school, and I thought, how am I going to earn a living? I thought maybe it'd be a nice little mail order business on the side, because if I wanted it, I bet some other women did.
Right.
Well, oh my.
Yeah. You didn't think you'd be starting a revolution.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
And truly, I did not understand for decades, I'm not exaggerating, for decades, how significant the sports bra is.
Yeah. Well, tell us about that the origin of what led you to invent it. What was the problem you were facing, and then how did this solution emerge?
I was in my mid-20s, maybe a little younger, and I didn't have a driver's license. I had a job I was sitting in a lot, so I was gaining weight and I wasn't comfortable with that. And a friend said, hey, try this jogging thing. Everybody's jogging is what we called it at the time. If you just run 1.25 miles 3 times a week, you'll lose weight. So I went, oh, okay, I can do that, because it didn't require getting to a gym or anything else. And it was being outside, which I loved. I liked that idea. So, and this was before there were even necessarily particular shoes for jogging and running. I was just put on my sneakers and went out the door. And I fell in love with it. I got hooked. By 1977, we're talking 1977, I was running about 30 miles a week, 5 or 6 miles a day. My bouncing breasts were uncomfortable and my bra straps were slipping down. And then I had a friend I ran with, who's a guy, and he'd be ahead of me, and the Vermont summers can get hot, and he'd pull off his shirt and tuck it behind in his shorts. And I thought, I'm jealous. I got this clammy bra on and sweat, Anyway, so it started as a joke. My sister called me she was living in California at the time, and she called me and said, I just started running. Only we didn't call it running then, but it was still jogging. And she said, I'm so uncomfortable with my bouncing boobs. What do you do? And I said, I've tried anything. I don't know. And she said, why isn't there a jock strap for women? And we laughed. We thought that was so funny. And I said, yeah, same concept, different part of the anatomy, right?
Right.
So we laughed and we hung up, and I sat down and I thought, that's not such a silly idea. And I was in graduate school at the time. And so I had notebooks and pencils around, and I sat down and I wrote down all the things that such a bra would have to do. It would have to support the breasts. It wasn't about lifting and separating and making them more attractive. It was about support. It would have to have straps that didn't fall down. It would have no hardware to dig in or chafe. I forget what, there's a whole list somewhere. I thought, yeah, this is what such a product would have to do. But I don't sew. I mean, sewing is not one of the ways I create. I can do a lot of things, but in 8th grade, I flunked sewing. Really, it was, I guess, a home ec class or something. But my friend Polly, who was in the same class in 8th grade, she excelled. And in fact, when she grew up, she became quite an accomplished costume designer. But that summer, she was doing the costumes for the Shakespeare Festival up here at UVM at the university here. So she was renting a room for me because I lived in Burlington, Vermont. She lived in Manhattan. She had this summer gig. So she said, hey, can I live in your guest room? And I said, sure, of course. So I had this idea. I'm downstairs. I had this idea about the bra, and I walked upstairs to her room and knocked on the door. Polly, Polly, what do I want? And she just rolled her eyes because we went to school together from 8th grade, starting in 8th grade, and we would cut gym classes together. Neither one of us were.
Wow.
We were not into sports at all. So she thought this thing with me running, she would just really rolled her eyes. She didn't know what that was about. And she said, oh, yeah, right. I'm not going to. I told her what I wanted to do. And she goes, no, no, no. And I said, why not? And she said, there's only one thing more difficult to create than a bra, and that's a shoe. I said, why? And she said, because it's about different parts of the body. It's not just drape and design. It has to support different parts of the body that are connecting. And, she said, it's really, but I knew my friend Polly, and I knew that design challenge is what would hook her. Had no interest in running or anything else. But then she's like, so how would it, and we sat down and started sketching. Then we started making prototypes up at the costume shop at UVM. There's even a plaque in the costume shop about the sports bra first sports bra was made here.
Wow.
And the prototype that really worked was when, in fact, we went and bought 2 jock straps, cut them apart, sewed them back together again. And I went running in it, and I went, oh my God. I mean, it was, it was the wrong fabric and everything else, but we had the concept down. We had the engine down, if you will.
Yeah. Wow. And then how did it take off? I mean, so how did this go from something that you just found, was helpful for you to like a worldwide necessity?
Well, because the need was there. I was right in one thing in terms of, well, if I want this, I bet other people do.
Yeah.
And if I had done market research, what I think is really funny is if I had done market research, I would never have started a business, because the market research would have told me that bra sales had been flat for decades, and that the existing lingerie companies that were making bras were just fighting for market share, just grabbing from each other, but there's no increase. In fact, bra sales were declining because, let's remember, this was 1977, or when all us weekend hippies were, not wearing our bras, or actually, there's the whole trope about burning bras, which actually never really happened, but was an attitude,
Right.
So if I had done that market research, I would have said, oh no, but I didn't. Because it had never occurred to me, because I was not interested in going into business. I had an art studio. I was back in graduate school studying education, and this was going to be a nice little mail order business on the side that would help me get through graduate school. We put in, and meanwhile, Polly was very clear that she'd help make this and she'd be supportive, but she was not interested in going into business. She had a gig she was going to back in New York. And, she became the costume designer for Jim Henson in Sesame Street, and has, like 8 Emmys at the moment.
Wow.
So she was clear that she didn't want to go into business, but that she would help from Manhattan. So her assistant that summer was a woman named Hinda Miller. And, well, then she was Hinda Schreiber, and she was interested in going into business. She because here's the thing that I've recently come to accept. I'm a visionary. I see connections. I But then when it comes to turning it into, into doing this, I want to hand it off. Okay,
Yeah.
this, go make it happen. It's
Right.
kind of
Right.
modus
Yeah.
operandi. And so Hinda was great because she just wanted to figure out how to get this thing manufactured, because all of a sudden we put this little ad in and all of a sudden all these orders were coming in. And in fact, one was from Macy's and lingerie department. And I'm going, no way. So Hinda found, we understood that what we needed to, we didn't want to start a manufacturing business. We weren't going to, do that. Cottage industry was out because of quality. You can't. And as Polly was very clear, this is sewing stretch on stretch. It's very difficult. This is, how much detail do you want? I mean, we found another entrepreneur in South Carolina. There were a lot of mills in that time, but they were all going out of business because that was the beginning of production leaving this country. And so there was a couple who was starting their own cut and sew operation, and they were willing. We were one product in 3 sizes, small, medium, and large, in one color. No, nobody who was real business was going to take us on. But this couple said, "Oh yeah, great, we'll do that." So we subcontracted out the making, and then my living room and dining room became the warehouse and office.
Wow.
Until my landlady said, "No, this is not okay." And we had to actually go rent offices.
Wow.
I mean, it was phenomenal how we did it. I mean, well, we were young.
Yeah. I mean, so how long did it take from your initial prototype to recognizing, gosh, there's a huge market for this and the demand is overwhelming and so on?
Not long at all. And within the first year, we knew we had a tiger by the tail.
Wow.
And then years later, one of our employees did this retrospective. She looked at the sales growth and she said, "Do you guys realize that you've been growing 25% per year?"
Wow.
What? And the other weird thing that neither one of us were really business people or aspired to be entrepreneurs. So we didn't know things like, we didn't realize that the fact that we were profitable every year was unusual. Because, well, that's how the game goes. You have to make a profit, anyway.
Yeah. Well, talk about where you see, I suppose maybe one thing I'd love to get your thoughts on is a distinction between invention and innovation. And there's one thing to invent something, but I wonder if you see innovation as a distinct process or a distinct phenomenon.
Well, it's interesting because how does invention happen without innovation? The very concept of invention, the creation, I don't know that I've ever separated.
Seen a distinction between those two. Yeah. I think one way in which people distinguish it is invention as simply having to do with something new that hasn't been done before, etc., and innovation as more having to do with the kind of making it widely accessible, its diffusion, its actual availability, accessibility, etc. And I wonder if you see those as related or separate phenomena.
See, that's all those things you just said, in my mind, would not be associated with innovation. To me, innovation is new, hasn't been before, hasn't existed in that configuration. It hasn't existed at all, or in that particular configuration. Innovation is new. So, the bras had existed before. The bra was nothing new or different, but how we put it together and what its purpose.
Yeah.
Creative.
Yeah.
And as yet a need that had not been recognized. And so that's how I think.
Yeah. And I suppose there are a lot of things, a lot of products where perhaps the novelty, the newness is there, but people still are not seeing a widespread need for it, or are not resonating with it, or it's not meeting an immediate demand, et cetera, or it's not taking off, right? And I think there's a lot of tension there. But in your case, that didn't seem to be an issue. It seems like very quickly after you recognized the need in your own life, it resonated with so many women around the world and revolutionized sports. And
right.
I want to ask you where you see the beauty in innovation. Would you use the word beauty to any aspect of innovation?
I have to think about that. I mean, for me, after, I ran that business for, I don't know, 12 years, over a dozen years before selling it. And after I'd sold it, I started thinking about what really matters.
Mm-hmm.
I had a degree of financial security. I had a new husband. I'd built a lovely house on Lake Champlain. I felt so lucky. And also, why did I have this feeling inside me that why wasn't I content, I guess?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
wasn't that I was unhappy, because that's not the case at all. But there was this something. And I had also started my volunteer work with the Epilepsy Foundation of America. And I found that very fulfilling and very important. And I write about this in my book. One day I was standing looking out the window in my studio at Lake Champlain, and it was a gray day. It wasn't, a traditionally pretty day. And I was struck by the beauty of the lake and the wind and the leaves. And it just hit me. I knew beauty is what really matters. Beauty is what really matters. And I thought, what the hell? I mean, in the same moment, I thought, what the hell does that mean? What, what am I saying? What? And I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, it always is. There is always beauty. It's eternal. It's eternal. And then I spent a long time thinking about what the hell.
Wow. So it's having an insight, but not quite knowing. I mean, you recognize this was true, and yet a part of you is just bewildered by what it means, or.
So I started doing a lot of reading. I had always been interested in philosophy. I read Kierkegaard and all this other stuff. But so I started looking at beauty, and there was very actually little written about beauty. I mean, and then you could say, well, let's change the word to aesthetics. And still, I mean, there's the standards of taste and, stuff like that. And it furrowed my brow, It's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. And why did I think that beauty is what really matters? And part of it was that it was eternal, that it didn't take mankind's interference to create. In fact, often that got in the way.
Yeah.
So I went back to school. I had never finished my graduate degree because Jogbra, the business, got in the way.
Sure.
So when I was, I guess, in my late 50s, was reading sort of what I call a woo-woo kind of magazine, and there was an ad for a program that was all about culture and spirituality. And I thought, oh, that's really... And what it listed and what it was talking about was matched all the books on my bedside table, kind of. And I went, I'm going to go. So I packed my bag. I did. I applied. I was so amazed. I applied.
Where was this?
It was I was living in Vermont at the time. Yeah. And this was Holy Names University in Oakland, California.
Wow. Okay.
Catholic university.
Okay.
And I packed my bags and went out of my big fancy house on Lake Champlain and went and lived in a dorm.
Wow. And how did you feel as you were doing that? I mean, were you just wondering did you have moments of wondering, what the hell am I doing here? And does this make any sense? Or was it very clear to you that this is really some kind of calling? And was it, did you find yourself satisfied in that pursuit?
Well, I felt like I found a path. And up until then, I'd gone to retreats and meditation centers and did a few things with Deepak Chopra and his crowd, and found that all very fed me. But I was still niggling on this thing about beauty, and I was alone. I mean, it wasn't like I had a group of people that I hung out with and we all sat around and talked about, well, is beauty really eternal, or what is it? And also, and I'd written a lot because I have always been a writer privately, mostly. I mean, I did a lot of the marketing stuff for Jogbra and all that kind of stuff, but all my writing had been private. So I was reading and writing, but where was the sharing or learning from others? Where were my people?
Yeah.
And so by going back to, I finished my graduate degree, but it was amazing. I mean, this program had some of the most amazing people come in and speak to us. And I did find my people there, but I did have a home and a husband in Vermont.
Right.
So talk about balancing.
All right, everybody, that's a good place to pause our conversation. In part 2, we'll step beyond products to Lisa's philosophy of true beauty, why she says beauty is harmony, how it relates to compassion and relationship, and what it means to practice beauty in a world obsessed with appearance, speed, and accumulation. See you next time.